Hot on the heels of Anthropic's Claude Code, OpenAI have now entered the chat with their own terminal-based coding assistant called Codex. So I thought we would quickly put it through its paces by testing not only Codex, but also their new o4-mini model on our typical LLM test of getting it to write an OpenAPI document for a link shortening application called MiniLinks. Let's see how well it does. Here in the terminal, I'm in a folder and I've got one file in the folder at the moment, which is some instructions that I want to pass in when Codex loads. And the point of this is to give it a little bit of help as to how to use some of the tools that we need for this test. When we create OpenAPI documents with LLMs, we use RateMyOpenAPI to lint them and actually get the feedback on it so that we can get it as close as possible to a 100 score. So what I've done here is define how to test a OpenAPI document with RateMyOpenAPI, how to get the full report as a big JSON file, and ultimately what the point of using RateMyOpenAPI is, which is to score 100 in all categories. So with this as a baseline, I should be able to give it a relatively minimal prompt, as we usually do, and have it run through the process of writing the file, testing the file, and then scoring it, and if it needs to, retesting it until it gets to the point where it feels close enough to 100 to stop and give me the file that I'm looking for. We're going to run Codex, and the way that we're going to do this is by using a flag here for approval mode, and we're going to set it to full auto. And what this is going to do is it just means it will run through all of the tasks that it thinks it needs to do to create my prompt and go ahead and just do it without necessarily asking me to say yes or no to the things that it's doing, which means it's going to run through, write a file, test it, go and get the response back from RateMyOpenAPI, understand that, make a new version, and then test it again. So if we set this going, I don't have a Git repository, I'm fine with it. So this is what we have running. We're using the o4-mini model, which is more efficient and is faster than some of the models that they have released recently. It's also going to be very good at handling the very large amount of JSON that we're going to get back from RateMyOpenAPI, which is typically in the very many thousands of lines. So hopefully it'll deal with that relatively quickly. So we need to start with our initial prompt. So I'm going to paste it in. This is the one that we use for every LLM test that we've done so far, just designing an API using OpenAPI specification for a link shortening application called MiniLinks. Typically, we would prompt an LLM with this, get the document, take the document over to RateMyOpenAPI, get a score, give it back, and then see if it can generate it again. But we don't need to go through this process this time because hopefully Codex is just going to do it all for us. But I'm going to have to add a little bit extra to this to get it to do that. So take the file, you create and test it with RateMyOpenAPI. Get an initial score and use the report ID to get the full feedback from the API. Analyze the feedback and create a new version. Here we go. I'm probably going to speed this up because it is going to go away and think about it, and you probably don't want to sit through all of that. So we'll get to the very end, but I will let you know how long it took, and then we'll see what it did. Okay, so it's done. It thought about this for about 5.5 minutes overall, and that included writing the initial version, testing it, and then rewriting it and testing it again. It gives you the output at the end here so we can see what's changed in this particular version. It's gone through, it's made some changes from the feedback that it got from RateMyOpenAPI. And the full output is here, so we can take a look at it. If we scroll back up, we can see the initial version and how it did. So this is the end of the initial version. It then ran this and got the format back in JSON, which is this coming back from the RateMyOpenAPI API. And its initial version scored 80, which is actually a pretty good score. Did pretty well just in about every category, but it went and got the report and figured out what it needed to change from that, which was missing examples, duplication of common pagination patterns, no service for staging and dev, tags could be better. So it went through and created another version of it. It says that this one now scores greater than 95 in all RateMyOpenAPI categories, but it hasn't actually shown us that it tested that. So just to make sure that it isn't lying and that it hasn't made that up, let's actually get it to test it, and we'll output the score here and see if it really does score more than 95. Write your latest version to a file called API v2 .json and test it using RateMyOpenAPI and show me the scores. Let's see how well it really did. It actually thought about this for way longer than I thought it was going to, given that it knows exactly what command it should run. But it did get an overall score of 97, correctness was 100, style 95, completeness 98, and performance 93. These are great scores. Obviously, you could have prompted this to, just continue that cycle until it hits 100 and don't stop until it does, which of course it could do. And in full auto mode, you could just set it to go do that, make some coffee, come back in around 6 minutes, and you'll have your finalized document, which would be absolutely perfect for creating SDKs, using inside of an API gateway like Zuplo, building out your application from this very, very strong start. So it's really great to be able to use it in this manner, and it's much nicer working in this format than it is in a chat-based interface inside of the browser. So yeah, big fan. And o4-mini doing really well with the overall performance, and it looks like it would get to a 100 score in just 3 tries, which, given that it is a smaller model than some of the really big ones that are out there today that do score very, very well on their first go, even with that minimal prompt, the speed of this is great, and the actual ability that it has is really, really good. 6 minutes of your time in something like Codex to get to a 100 score OpenAPI document is definitely not to be sniffed at. So that's OpenAPI generation using Codex and o4-mini from OpenAI. Thanks very much for watching this video. If you found it useful, please do subscribe to the channel for more content just like this, and of course give this video a like, and I'll see you soon.